The unseen force. The stars had long burned bright across the galaxy as the many species of the cosmos went about their way. Wars were fought, alliances were forged, and peaceful trade routes spanned entire sectors. But there were few things that could truly stir the hearts of those who ruled the galaxy. Those who had seen millennia of peace, those who had conquered the darkness of space with sheer might and intellect. These beings, known across star systems for their intellect and advanced technologies, believed they had seen it all. Nothing could surprise them anymore. Until humans arrived. No one could have predicted it. No one could have imagined that a small, seemingly insignificant species from a solitary, blue planet would rise to become a force to be reckoned with. At first glance, humans seemed just like any other young species striving to find their place in the universe. Their ships were rudimentary compared to the sleek warships of the galactic superpowers, their technology still in its infancy. But beneath the surface of their civilization, there was something unique, something that no other species had dared to understand. Humans were relentless. They fought not just for survival, but with an unyielding will to win, to persevere. They possessed an uncanny ability to adapt, to improvise, and to use every ounce of their intelligence to outsmart even the most advanced civilizations. This resilience, this unrelenting drive, was something no one had expected. The galaxy's first encounter with the humans was not on a battlefield, but in the corridors of diplomacy. The largest galactic federation, a coalition of species united by the common goal of mutual prosperity, had been observing the humans from afar. Their scientific curiosity was piqued by the strange newcomers who dared to venture beyond their own star system. Yet there was hesitation. The Council feared that humans, though promising, might be nothing more than a fleeting spark in the cold void of space. But everything changed when the humans made their first official contact with the Valkorians, an ancient, powerful species known for their superior intellect and ruthless conquest. The Valkorians, rulers of an entire star cluster, were known for their strict codes of conduct and their disregard for anything that didn't serve their purpose. When they received an invitation for peace talks from the humans, they laughed. To them, the humans were just another species to conquer, another civilization that would soon bow to their might. And so, the Valkorians descended on the human homeworld, confident that their advanced fleets and weaponry would crush whatever resistance the humans might muster. But what they didn't account for was the human spirit. When the Valkorian fleet arrived at Earth's orbit, they expected to see a planet full of trembling, unprepared inhabitants. Instead, they found something entirely different. The humans had prepared. They had studied, learned, and adapted in a way no one had anticipated. They didn't meet the Valkorians with a fleet of ships. No, they did something far more remarkable. Humanity unleashed its ingenuity. The Valkorians arrived expecting a war. Instead, they found themselves facing an unprecedented challenge. The humans had devised a way to harness the energy of their sun, using solar technology far more advanced than anything the Valkorians had imagined possible. With this power, they could disrupt entire fleets, creating energy pulses that disabled Valkorian ships, forcing them to retreat. But it wasn't just the technology that set humans apart. It was their ability to think on their feet, to adapt in real time, to turn the tide of battle with nothing more than sheer determination. The Valkorians, who had conquered worlds for millennia, found themselves outmatched by a species they had underestimated. And just when they thought they had the upper hand, the humans did the unthinkable. They called for peace. It wasn't a plea for mercy. It wasn't a desperate cry for help. It was an offer to share their knowledge, to work together for the betterment of the galaxy. The Valkorians were caught off guard. They had never faced such audacity, such boldness from a species they deemed weak and insignificant. But the humans were far from weak. They were a force that had only just begun to show its true power. The Valkorians, once certain of their victory, were now forced to reconsider their approach. The humans didn't cower. They didn't beg. They stood tall and demanded respect. As the Velkorian fleet retreated, a new thought began to spread across the galaxy. If humans could do this, if they could stand up to the might of a species like the Velkorians, what other surprises were they hiding? The answer came soon enough. The humans weren't just surviving in the vastness of space. They were thriving. Their small, yet mighty fleets began to grow, their technologies evolving at an exponential rate. They didn't need the largest ships or the most advanced weapons. They simply used what they had in the most ingenious ways. Their fleets were a testament to human creativity, to their ability to think outside the box, and to their willingness to do whatever it took to succeed. But the Velkorians weren't the only ones who had underestimated humanity. As humans made their mark on the galaxy, they encountered more species, some peaceful, some aggressive, and others simply indifferent. And in every interaction, humans brought something unique to the table: an unbreakable spirit, an unshakable will, and a drive to not only survive, but to make their mark on the stars. The galaxy would soon learn what it meant to face the power of humanity, and the lessons they would learn from their encounters with humans would change the course of history forever. Humanity's journey was only just beginning. The rising tide. The galaxy had begun to stir. The stars no longer seemed as distant or untouchable, especially to those who had once believed they were the true rulers of the cosmos. The humans, a species whose humble beginnings seemed almost laughable to the more advanced races, were now creating ripples in the galactic tide, ripples that would soon grow into waves. It wasn't just their technological achievements that made them formidable, but the nature of their will. Their resilience was a force unlike anything the galaxy had witnessed. But as humanity's presence grew, so did the challenges they would face. Their peaceful overtures to the Velkorians had changed the dynamics of the region. The Velkorians, once certain in their supremacy, were now engaged in a delicate dance of diplomacy with a species they had once looked down upon. The universe, which had seemed so orderly and predictable, had begun to unravel. In the wake of the humans' unexpected rise, many species found themselves reevaluating their place in the stars. Could they coexist with this audacious species, or would they be swept aside in the wake of humanity's unstoppable progress? As time passed, a new wave of interest swept through the galaxy. The Council of the Andari, a peaceful coalition of species who had spent millennia perfecting their systems of diplomacy, had long maintained neutrality. They believed in balance, in maintaining peace no matter the cost. But the humans' unexpected defiance of traditional diplomatic methods had caught their attention. They watched with increasing curiosity as humanity grew in influence, and as their interactions with other species grew bolder. Andari diplomats had always approached problems with a calm, calculated mindset, believing that a peaceful resolution was always possible if both sides were willing to compromise. But they saw something different in the humans. They didn't just seek peace. They sought justice, respect, and equality. And when those things were not given to them, they fought, not with sheer might, but with their ingenuity and resourcefulness. It was as though humanity refused to be boxed in by the rules of the old world. They would find their own way, no matter the cost. Meanwhile, the Phyrexians, the terrifyingly powerful insectoid species who had terrorized the galaxy for eons, began to take notice of the humans. Their empire stretched across countless star systems, and their armies were feared throughout the galaxy. But what had always set the Phyrexians apart was their reliance on fear. They ruled with intimidation, conquering worlds by making their enemies tremble before them. But when the Phyrexians received reports of humanity's victory over the Velkorians, they felt an unfamiliar sense of unease. For the first time in centuries, they questioned their own superiority. The humans had stood their ground against the Velkorians, a species far more advanced than the Phyrexians themselves. How had they managed it? What was it about the humans that made them so unpredictable? The Phyrexians, like the Velkorians before them, dismissed humanity's potential at first, but the growing number of reports that reached their ears painted a different picture. Humanity was not to be underestimated. It was around this time that the humans made a pivotal decision. They had heard whispers of the Phyrexian Empire's expansion into nearby star systems, systems that were home to some of humanity's newest colonies. The Phyrexians had long operated under the belief that no species, no matter how advanced, could withstand their might. But humanity had already proven time and time again that they were not like the others. Rather than wait for the inevitable conflict, humanity decided to act first. They knew the Phyrexians were coming, and they knew they couldn't afford to meet them in battle with sheer numbers or firepower. Instead, they relied on what had always been their greatest strength: creativity. They began to construct enormous defensive networks, complex systems of satellites, mines, and automated ships that would make any invasion costly, if not impossible. The Phyrexians, who prided themselves on their ability to overwhelm their enemies with sheer force, found themselves up against something they had never faced before: a species that was willing to sacrifice and endure for the sake of survival. Humanity didn't have the luxury of vast resources or overwhelming numbers, but they did have the ability to adapt, and in the vastness of space, that was more powerful than any weapon. The Phyrexians, upon arrival in the contested sector, were met with a coordinated defense that took them completely off guard. They launched wave after wave of their formidable fleets, expecting to crush any resistance they encountered. Instead, they found their ships battered and their troops bogged down by humanity's relentless traps. The human ships, small, agile, and unpredictable, seemed to always be one step ahead. They had calculated the Phyrexians' every move, and each time the Phyrexians made an advance, the humans countered it with a new strategy, a new surprise. But what truly rattled the Phyrexians was not the battle itself, but the nature of the conflict. Unlike the Valkorians, who had been swayed by diplomatic negotiations, the Phyrexians were not a species that understood the value of negotiation or compromise. They believed in absolute power. And yet, humanity wasn't giving in. Even as the battles raged on, humanity offered terms of peace, not out of fear, but out of a desire for resolution. They weren't interested in destroying the Phyrexians, but in showing them that there was more to strength than simply crushing your enemies. It was a lesson the Phyrexians were slow to learn, but it was one they couldn't ignore. As the war progressed, the Phyrexians began to realize something they had never considered. The humans, for all their flaws and shortcomings, were formidable because they understood something essential. Strength was not about dominance. It was about perseverance, adaptability, and the ability to think beyond the immediate conflict. And so, as the months passed, and the war between humanity and the Phyrexians wore on, the balance of power slowly began to shift. The Phyrexians found themselves losing ground, not because they were weaker, but because they were no longer the only ones who understood how to fight. Humanity, with their stubborn resolve and creativity, had found a way to challenge their empire. But even as humanity continued to stand tall in the face of the Phyrexian onslaught, the galaxy watched, unsure of what would come next. Would the Phyrexians retreat, or would they launch a final devastating strike? What would humanity's role be in this vast and ever-changing galaxy? The answers were unclear, but one thing was certain: humanity was no longer a species to be ignored. They had risen from the shadows of their homeworld and were carving their place among the stars. And as they continued to fight, to adapt, and to inspire, the question that lingered on everyone's mind was this: how much further would humanity go? The crucible of choice. The galaxy was no longer the quiet, predictable expanse it once was. The rising power of humanity had shaken its foundation, and now its every move was watched with both awe and fear. From the high councils of the Andari to the war rooms of the Phyrexians, no one was sure what to make of the humans. Their surprising adaptability, their unwavering resolve, and their growing presence were creating ripples that threatened to become full-blown waves, disrupting the established order in ways no one had expected. Humanity had proved itself capable of defying the odds time and time again, but the question on everyone's mind was whether they could sustain their momentum. Would they continue to rise, or would the galaxy's older and more powerful species crush them underfoot? That was the gamble all the major empires were watching unfold. Amidst this brewing tension, a new development arose that would force humanity to confront its greatest challenge yet. After their victory over the Phyrexians, an unexpected and hard-fought triumph, the human leadership knew they had entered a new stage in their journey. They had outwitted a species that had dominated entire star systems for millennia. Yet, they had paid a price. The Phyrexians were still a formidable force, and the cost of maintaining a constant defensive posture against them was wearing thin. Resources were being stretched to their limits, and humanity was no longer just a passive observer in the galaxy. They were becoming a player in the highest of stakes. In this moment of growing tension, humanity received a transmission that would set the stage for their next great test. The Valorians, a race of technologically advanced beings who had long dominated the far reaches of the galaxy, were sending an emissary to Earth. The Valorians were an ancient race, known for their intelligence and their cold, calculating approach to diplomacy. Their homeworld was a shining example of perfection, an artificial paradise where nature was controlled and resources were carefully balanced. The Valorians had little need for war, relying instead on their superior technology and influence to maintain control over the systems they claimed. The message they sent to humanity was simple, yet laden with heavy implications. They acknowledged humanity's resilience, but they also warned that humanity's continued expansion into certain territories was becoming a problem. The Valorians were not an aggressive species, but they were known for their ability to maintain control through subtle manipulation and sophisticated pressure. The humans were encroaching on their borders, and the Valorians would not tolerate further disruption. The human leadership, led by Grand President Maxwell, gathered in a tense meeting to discuss how best to respond. For all their strength, humanity had never dealt with a race as quietly powerful as the Valorians. Unlike the Phyrexians, who preferred direct confrontation, the Valorians excelled in the realm of negotiation and influence. Their mastery of subtlety was something humanity had yet to fully understand. "I've been thinking about this," Grand President Maxwell said, standing at the head of the room, his voice calm but laced with determination. "The Valorians are not going to wage an all-out war against us. They're too calculated for that. But they've made it clear that they want us to back off. If we don't, they'll find ways to push us out. We can't afford to be passive about this." A voice from the crowd of advisors spoke up. "We've always faced threats head-on, Maxwell. We've shown the galaxy that we won't back down. Why should we start now?" Maxwell's gaze swept across the room. He knew that some within his council favored a more aggressive approach. Humanity had been successful in the past by fighting, adapting, and prevailing. But this time was different. The Valorians were not the Phyrexians. This was a race that didn't fight battles with weapons alone, but with influence and strategy. "We won't back down," Maxwell replied, his voice firm. "But we must be smart about it. We need to send a message to the Valorians that we're not going to retreat just because they say so. At the same time, we must find a way to get what we need without triggering an all-out conflict." The room fell silent. The Valorians had never been defeated in war. Their history was marked by quiet domination, their power exerted through alliances, trade, and subtle coercion. But the human leadership was beginning to understand the delicate balance they needed to strike. If they were to survive in this galaxy and thrive, they would have to adapt once again. After much deliberation, Maxwell turned to his military leaders. "We'll prepare for a show of force, but not an invasion. We'll send a fleet to the border systems they've claimed, but we won't engage unless provoked. We need to demonstrate that we won't cower before them." He then turned to his diplomatic corps. "Simultaneously, we'll offer them an alternative, a treaty. We'll propose a shared system of resources, a mutual agreement where both sides benefit. We've shown that we can stand toe-to-toe with the galaxy's greatest forces. Now we need to prove that we can do something they haven't seen before. We can negotiate, we can build relationships, and we can share power. The decision was made. The human fleet, under the direction of Admiral Jace Karn, began to move toward the contested systems, while diplomatic emissaries were sent to the Valorians. The Valorians were well aware of humanity's growing influence, and their response came quickly. A high-ranking Valorian diplomat arrived on Earth, a tall, poised figure draped in the robes of their people. His name was Virok, and his reputation preceded him. He was known for his cold logic and his ability to sway entire councils with a few carefully chosen words. Virok's arrival on Earth was a spectacle in itself. The humans had never seen a species quite like the Valorians, who seemed to glide effortlessly through the air, their movements graceful and precise. Yet, despite their elegance, there was an unmistakable sense of superiority in their presence. Virok, however, did not come with the usual demands of conquest or war. Instead, he sought to engage humanity in a conversation about balance. "The galaxy is a delicate system," Virok began, his voice as smooth as glass. "For centuries, the Valorians have maintained a careful equilibrium, one that has ensured the survival of many species. You, humans, are a fascinating anomaly. You have disrupted that balance, but there is potential for cooperation. What do you seek in this galaxy, and how far are you willing to go to get it?" Maxwell met Virok's gaze without flinching. "We seek a place among the stars," he said simply. "We seek peace, cooperation, and respect. But we are not afraid to fight for it when necessary." The two stood in silence for a long moment, each weighing the other's words. The air was thick with tension, not from hostility, but from the understanding that this was a moment of choice, a crossroads for both humanity and the galaxy. The decision humanity made in this moment would be the turning point in their struggle for survival. They would either bend to the will of the Valorians or forge a new path, one that would either lead to peaceful coexistence or to a galaxy-wide confrontation. Humanity had always been resourceful, but now they would have to show that their ingenuity and willpower were enough to challenge the old powers of the galaxy. The echo of resolve. The balance of power in the galaxy was shifting, and the human presence was becoming an undeniable force. For generations, the older, more established species had thrived, thinking themselves invincible in the vastness of space. Their advanced technologies, their ancient wisdom, and their control over countless worlds had been the bedrock of their power. But humanity, in its short time among the stars, had thrown a wrench into the status quo. The Phyrexians had learned the hard way that humans were not to be underestimated, and now, the Valorians, perhaps the most calculating of the galaxy's empires, were beginning to feel the tremors of a change they could not ignore. As humanity's influence spread, their reputation as a species that could adapt, survive, and most surprisingly, negotiate, was gaining strength. But this growing power was not without its challenges. The galaxy was a place filled with intrigue and deceit, where even the smallest misstep could lead to destruction. Humanity had already faced the consequences of misjudgments, miscalculations that had cost them dearly in the past. Now they were walking a tightrope between making allies and making enemies, with each step closer to the heart of the galaxy increasing the stakes. It was in the wake of their diplomatic victory over the Phyrexians, who had, against all expectations, retreated from the contested sectors, that the humans received a troubling invitation. The Valorians, having monitored the rise of the human race with both fascination and concern, finally extended an olive branch. A diplomatic envoy was sent, led by the renowned Valorian diplomat, Elisar, a being whose reputation for navigating the most complex political situations was unmatched. Elisar had spent centuries serving the Valorian Empire, securing their position at the top of the galactic hierarchy. But now, as the human presence loomed larger, Elisar had been dispatched to deal with what many considered a problem in the making. Elisar arrived on Earth, his sleek, shimmering form reflecting the light of the sun. The Valorians were known for their beauty, their elegance, and their unyielding sense of superiority. But there was something different about their ambassador. Instead of the usual air of disdain, Elisar appeared thoughtful, even somewhat apprehensive. He was the first of his kind to speak directly with humans, and there was an underlying tension in the air as he made his way to the heart of human civilization. The meeting was set in one of Earth's grandest council chambers, a place where history had been made and where humanity had begun to forge its future in the stars. There, Grand Presider Maxwell awaited, flanked by his top diplomats and military advisors. He had been briefed on the situation, but this was a moment of uncertainty. The Valorians were not a species easily swayed. They played the long game, using their vast influence and technological superiority to shape the galaxy to their will. Yet, Maxwell knew this meeting was an opportunity, a chance for humanity to carve out its own place in the galactic order without compromising its ideals. Elisar entered the chamber with all the grace of his species, his eyes glowing softly as he surveyed the room. The humans were strange to him, unpredictable, yes, but not without value. He knew that his people could not afford to dismiss them, not when they had already proven themselves capable of feats that few had imagined possible. Grand Presider Maxwell, Elisar began, his voice smooth and measured. I come to you not with threats, but with an offer. The Valorian Empire has been watching your species with great interest. We have seen what you are capable of, and we acknowledge your strength. But I must be clear. We do not wish to see your kind grow out of control. The balance we have worked so hard to maintain cannot be shattered by the unyielding forces you command. Maxwell stood tall, his hands resting on the podium in front of him. He did not speak immediately, letting Elisar's words hang in the air. The silence stretched on, but Maxwell's expression was calm, even resolute. He had heard the rumors of the Valorians' demands, of their desire for humanity to cease expanding into certain sectors. The message was clear. They'd wanted to dictate the terms of humanity's rise, to ensure that their growth did not destabilize the galactic order. You speak of balance, Ambassador, Maxwell replied, his voice firm but respectful. But balance is not something that can be maintained by stifling the progress of others. Humanity has risen from the ashes of its past to stand alongside the greatest species the galaxy has ever known. We do not seek to destabilize the galaxy, but neither will we allow ourselves to be contained. Elisar's eyes narrowed slightly, his mind working behind the cool, placid exterior. You misunderstand, Grand Presider. It is not your potential we fear, but your unpredictability. The galaxy has always functioned under the understanding that certain lines should not be crossed, that certain limits should not be tested. But you, humans, you have shown that no line is sacred to you. Your will is your greatest weapon, and that is something we cannot allow to go unchecked. Maxwell leaned forward slightly, his eyes locking with the Valorian diplomat. You fear what you do not understand, he said, and perhaps that is the core of the problem. Humanity will not be stifled by your balance. We have our own destiny to carve, and if you want to stand in our way, you will find that we are not easily defeated. The room fell silent again. Elisar considered Maxwell's words carefully. He had underestimated humanity before, but this response, this fierce, unwavering confidence, was something different. It was not arrogance, it was a reflection of the human spirit, something he had not encountered in his centuries of experience with the galaxy's other races. This was a species that would not bend to the will of another, a species that would fight to the end to define their future. Perhaps, Elisar said slowly, his voice softer now, perhaps you are right. Perhaps it is not for us to dictate the terms of your rise. But we have one request, Grand Presider. We will allow your species to continue its expansion, to carve out its place in the galaxy, but you must understand that your actions have consequences. The galaxy is not a playground for the reckless. If you wish to thrive, you must learn to coexist. Maxwell paused. The challenge was clear. Humanity had always fought for survival, but now they faced the task of growing not just in power, but in wisdom. The Valorians were offering a fragile peace, a peace with conditions. Yes, but a peace nonetheless. It was a chance to prove that humanity could not only survive in the galaxy, but thrive alongside its older, more powerful neighbors. "I accept your offer, Ambassador," Maxwell said finally, his voice steady. "But know this, humanity will never kneel to anyone. We will forge our own path, and we will make our own place in the stars. If you wish to stand with us, we welcome you. But if you seek to stand against us, you will find that we are not easily broken." Illusor studied Maxwell for a long moment, as if weighing the words of the human leader against the weight of his own people's desires. "Then we shall see, Grand Presider. We shall see how this new chapter of the galaxy unfolds." With that, the two leaders shook hands. Two species, once strangers, now bound by the uncertain path that lay ahead. Humanity had passed yet another test, but the true crucible was only beginning. Would they continue to rise? Would they find their place in the galaxy? Or would their resolve be tested in ways they had yet to imagine? The answer, as always with humanity, would depend on their ability to adapt, to survive, and to forge their own destiny. And the galaxy, once again, would have to wait and watch.